fire rescue, EMS, law enforcement. These are the three components of public safety, and those who answer the call are the first responders. Welcome to another episode of 5-Alarm Task Force with your host, Steve Green. 5-Alarm Task Force presents some of the best instructors, leaders, and mentors in public safety today to educate, elucidate, and entertain. No topic is out of bounds, and every opinion has value. 5-Alarm Task Force is brought to you by 5-Alarm Task Force Corp. One family, one mission. First responders helping each other. And our sponsors, Insight Training LLC, your best bet for fire service TIC training. The Firehouse Tribune, where you can expand your horizons in emergency services and learn to work hard, stay safe, and live inspired. And we're proud to welcome as a full sponsor, LifeScan Wellness Centers, saving the lives of America's heroes. And our promotional partners, Chief Miller Products and Sites, Responder Wipes, uniquely formulated wipes for first responders to reduce the risk. Nestor Bars, the amazing new hand tool for the fire service. EFT Corporation, 40 plus years of innovation in donation and payment processing solutions. 911lifestyle.com, first responder burnout prevention and improved health. The Firefighter Cancer Foundation, fighting to extinguish firefighter cancer since 2004. The Firefighter Cancer Support Network, the Albemarle Sweet Shop, the North Florida Fire Expo, and the Great Florida Fire School. Remember, our ultimate goal is for you to be safe and return home after every call. So insert those earphones or turn up those speakers. The 5-Alarm Task Force is being dispatched right now.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of 5-Alarm Task Force. And this episode of 5-Alarm Task Force, it is our second episode in our sixth season. We're happy to be with you. I'm your host, once again, Steve Green. Happy to be with you and happy to have you with us. And my guest today is Lieutenant Chris Kessinger. He is a career lieutenant with the City of Riverside, Ohio Fire Department. He has been in the fire service for 17 years. He believes that everyone must be a lifelong student of the craft and love this blue-collar job. That's great. Everyone must be a lifelong student of the craft. We'll talk about that more later. Chris serves as the lead instructor and owner of Citizens First Fire Training, in addition to the role of training officer and instructor for numerous schools, training facilities, and departments. In addition, he is also a member of the Central Ohio Fools chapter. While currently assigned to an engine company, his passion and heart will always be with truck company operations. We have a few of those listeners who will kind of agree with you on that. Chris is a nobody from nowhere that just loves the job and spreading the passion for it everywhere he goes. Our citizens are our priority, and we must always remember our mission and that they are number one. Great bio, Chris. Nice to have you with us. Great to be with you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad you reached out to me, and I kind of reached out to you. We found each other on social media. I think it was actually on LinkedIn, maybe, or was it Facebook? One of those two. But we found each other, and I like the concept of the name Citizens First Fire Training. Now, you can look at it two ways, I guess, as the coin flips. You can look at it as you're saying, well, because citizens are first, we're as firefighters, we must always keep our fire training active, or we're teaching a course called Citizens First Fire Training. So in case the citizens get there before our, if we're on a suburban company and we only got 3 guys riding on an engine company and the second due piece isn't in, it's going to be 5 or 6 minutes behind us because they're on a mutual aid. It could go either way, but I think you mean that the citizens come first. Am I right?
Completely right. It's a reminder that some of the guys need to have is that we're not here for us. Our safety is not number one. Us sitting in a recliner is not the priority that we should have each day. That we really need to be out training. We need to be putting everything first to serve the citizens. I mean, they allow us to have the job that we have. They give us the equipment that we have, and it's the best thing in the world to me. So we have to remember that they are always and will always be the priority.
Right. And really what you echo, I'm not sure, well, you've been in 17 years, so you probably remember Chief Chief Brunacini from Phoenix. May he rest in peace. And, he always taught in almost every talk he gave and many of his articles. He says, our job is to take care of Mrs. Smith on her worst day, even if that worst day is her cat up a tree. And you can't pass judgment. You go, you assist her cat, you bring the cat back to Mrs. Smith, you say, thank you, ma'am, and you get on your way to your next call. And you can't say, well, that was a crappy call. No, it wasn't, because for Mrs. Smith, that was a very important call. And it sounds like your, the philosophy you've put together for Citizens First is really echoing Chief Bruno.
Oh, I completely fall into the line of customer service. We're there to take care of the citizens we serve, and everything that we do needs to be around that.
Right. So let me ask you this, and this is a tough question I'm going to kick you with right from the start. You teach at schools around the country, around your area in the middle part of the country there in Ohio, and I lived south of you in Cincinnati for a year. And as you travel around, do you see these different, we'll call them phases of the moon of firefighters? Some say who, follow that tenet just like you do and Chief Bruno preached, and others who are kind of midway, and others just say, look, I'm just here to get my paycheck and I'm out the door after my shift is over.
100%. We see it everywhere we go. You will have groups in each of those segments.
Okay. So how do let's start with your when you started it at home, when you started out of your home to push this training, how was it received initially by colleagues and others who had first heard about it?
Even when I just started training more in the firehouse, you met a lot of resistance to begin with. And I think that's pretty common for people that are into the job, that are aggressive with it, is that you're going to meet resistance because you're taking people out of their comfort zones. You're making them uncomfortable. And that's the only place that you can grow, is when you get out of your comfort zone. So I had to get out of my comfort zone initially to start the training, to be able to put myself out there to start doing things, for me to grow as a fireman and as an instructor. And it was a lot of resistance to begin with, both in departments I worked for and in the area that I live in, but it's coming a long way.
That's great to hear. What took you out of your comfort zone that was the genesis of this whole action?
I think I just finally got tired of the mediocrity. I didn't want to sit there in a chair. I hate sitting in reclining chairs. I don't want to sit and watch TV and everything when I'm at work. I want to get better. I want to be doing stuff. I like to stay active. I spent just under 7 years in the military that we were active all the time, going in and out of different countries and everything that we were doing there. And I don't like being stagnant. I want to grow. I want to get better, and I want to continually learn. And you can't do that from the comfort of inside a station.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for your service to our country. We certainly appreciate that, as well as your time and efforts in the fire service. So I think that there are a lot of people like you who feel the same way. We've had them as guests on the show, and I've met them at fire schools where I've been invited to either show up to take pictures and videos and things like that, or to teach my class that after the first year, I was invited by the educational director to create my course, because he knew I was passionate about firefighter health, wellness, and fitness for duty. And I'd gotten very heavily into, and still am involved in the Firefighter Cancer Initiative, the PPE issues. And that's what our podcast, our webinar is on next week, is coming out, looking towards a safe future for our bunker gear and ourselves. It's going to be a positive webinar. In other words, we're not bashing the manufacturers. We've done that for 2 years. They know we don't like them, and the IAFF showed them, gave them a great lesson in January at the National Convention. So now we're here this webinar is to take care of our firefighters and tell them that, all is not lost. We have new innovations coming that will be coming in our gear over the next couple of years, and we will have safer gear in the future, and we will be able to get back. And as I said to one of the guests last night, who's going to be on the show, is that when we sign up to be firefighters, we know there's an inherent risk. We don't know every risk, but we know there's an inherent risk, and we agree and it makes no difference whether we're career, volunteer, part pay, wildland. We take an oath to serve and protect. And we know that there's a chance that there are some bad things out there. And we say, we'll do them. Okay, we'll do it. To have it come from within our gear was what turned everybody upside down. I mean, we'll go to hazmat scenes. We'll go to the worst. We're coming on the 20th anniversary in 3 weeks of the most terrible loss we've suffered in the fire service and to our citizens in one fell swoop. But it didn't sway us from our jobs. It didn't sway us from our dedication. So we're willing to take those risks to protect. And that probably our citizens have no idea what really goes on in the firehouse, because they only see us when we're either on our way to a call, no matter what apparatus we're on, or coming home from the call, or they might bump into us in the grocery store when that team is out buying the meals for the day. And one of the things I've always said, and you've said it with the citizens first, is that I've said that every team that goes out to shop at a grocery store or wherever to pick up food for the day, for the crew that day on that shift, should carry pamphlets and cards with them, so that if they run into a parent with a child in the supermarket, he says, mommy, that's a fireman, they can, yeah, were you looking at my badge? Yeah, that's what I am. And you have a little card to give the child or the parent, and a little brochure on fire safety, something to give, because that way, not only is it important for us to learn, but we have to share that knowledge, not only with each other, but we have to show the community that we don't just answer calls. We love our communities. We care for our communities and the people that live in them. So that we're always, fire prevention isn't just the second week in October. Fire prevention is 365 days a year.
Mm-hmm. Completely. We actually carry plastic helmets in all of our apparatus to hand out to kids anytime we see them on calls.
Great.
So
not
that's
just
actually
Santa,
one of my favorite part of the day.
Right. Not just Santa Sunday or Santa Saturday. It's, you have those coloring books and helmets on the apparatus all the time when you run into a kid, and you know that you can make a difference in that child or in that family's life with that 1 3-minute encounter in the supermarket. You might change their life.
Absolutely. So that's actually one of my crew's favorite things to do, is when they see the kid after a fire, a crash, a medical call, is to be able to hand those out.
That's amazing. And that's what the fire service is really about. That's really who we are, reaching out to our people that we protect and letting them know that we're not sitting in the recliners during the daytime, just taking it easy. Even with the pandemic that we've all been dealing with, it's up the game tremendously. Before the pandemic, most of us were running. Do you run EMS out of your department? Okay.
Yeah,
So, most departments, I mean, I've been out longer than you guys have been in, but today, most departments with rescue and medics are running between 75 and 85% of their calls are EMS. That doesn't mean we stop fire training.
Absolutely not.
And at the same time, it doesn't mean our medics stop their fire training. But yes, has it been more difficult for our medical teams with the pandemic? Absolutely, because it's required a lot more. And yet, when you look at some of the articles, the great articles that have been there of how departments across this country sought out innovation of their own, and on their own started hanging plastic in the rigs so that they could, after each possible patient, rip it out, hang new plastic curtains, protect everybody they can. That didn't come from anywhere but our own background, our own innovation, our own thinking. What can we do to make this part of the job, which is now so much riskier from something we can't see, how do we make it a little bit easier and safer for us and other patients we're going to carry that aren't COVID patients? And we stepped up to it. The pictures are all over, social media and our trades, how well we did with that. And yet sometimes we still fall short on the part that you like to underscore, which is that always be open to learn. And as I add to it, and then you have to be open to share. Because if the senior person in the house, and that person doesn't have to be an officer, he doesn't have to wear any bars or bugles, but he could still be one of the most learned members. He or she could still be one of the most learned members of that firehouse. And they could help a rookie with a knot. They could help a rookie with lifting. Let me just show you this. I saw you had a hard time. I watched you outside. You were having a hard time with this. Let me see if I can help you out with that. You have to share the knowledge as well, because you can learn and absorb it, but if you don't share it and put it into action with your fellow firefighters, what good does it do for just one firefighter to know it?
Agreed. Knowledge that's not shared and passed on is knowledge that's wasted. We're not on the job forever, and it needs to be passed on. So we are saving lives, that we are helping people, and that we're making a difference.
So how long have you been teaching for your company?
The company had originally formed in 2019. So we're just over 2 years right now, officially formed.
Okay. And so most of 2020, you were doing virtual rather than.
No, we continued hand-on.
Really?
Yeah, we were able to mitigate a lot of issues. We disinfected, we kept smaller class numbers, but yeah, we've been able to keep hands-on trainings with zero transmission issues.
That's great. That is amazing, because so many of us have had to drop to Zoom, and which, I mean, it keeps us in contact. It allows us to learn, but TV learning isn't always the best way for professionals. Might be good for Bert and Ernie and Big Bird, but when we have things that we have to do that really require hands-on learning, you can't throw a ladder on Zoom.
No, you can't learn to force a door and read a door when you're going through a PowerPoint.
As a former truckie, right, who still yearns for those days, as he said in his bio. But you're right, you can't do that if you're on Zoom. You need to be out there. It's funny that I use that as an example to throwing the ladder, because one of my previous guests was a lieutenant in DC, lieutenant or captain in DC on an aerial company. And he said, he 10:30 at night. All right, boys, we're going out. What do you mean? It's 10:30. Yeah. Well, you get fires at 10:30. You got to be able to put that ladder up in the dark and not hit the wires. So we're out. We're going to spend an hour out, and let's go down to this street and that street. And but okay, all right, then we'll just stay late and we can do it that. No, that's okay. That's all right. We'll go out. We'll go out. And that's what, and that's what he insisted on, because he said, you have to be ready for any fire call, day or night, eclipse, comet heading towards the earth. You have to be ready for that fire call. And if you're not ready to put that ladder up in the darkest of dark, if there's a power outage and all we have is the old little spotlights that used to be on the ladders. Now they have nice LED lights that work much better. But the old ones, even on my snorkel back in the 70s, we had a beautiful brand new Pierce snorkel. But they only had those little spotlights, the same thing like used to be on the police car windows or the chief's windows, on the buggy. Those don't throw a lot of light. And you need to know, if you're raising that ladder in the dark, where those wires are before you.
Absolutely.
Big bunch of French fries on the street. So I like that you say that. Have you found, let's say in your own department, they know that you've had this company, they know this is what you're doing. Have you found in your fire company, or let's say your crew itself, now that you're an engine company now, lieutenant on the engine company, have you found them pretty amenable to your way of thinking as one of their officers?
Absolutely. They've been great, very supportive of everything goes there. And a lot of them actually will come and help with the classes that go on. So
Okay.
they're able to get extra reps in, they're able to do stuff. And we've actually brought in our forcible entry doors and stuff to the department and let all the crews work on them for a
Oh,
week
that's
or two at
wonderful.
a time. So
That's great.
definitely
Yeah,
open. So we get a lot of buy-in, just not from my shift, but other shifts as well. We'll have people.
great, great. And the people around the community, other departments, stuff like that, they're getting interested in it too.
Yeah, we actually have a few of the surrounding departments that are hosting classes right now. We actually have one coming up this Saturday that's being hosted for the entire county region, and it's a
Wow.
sold out forcible entry class. And so we've had them sending people to our Prioritize the Search conferences. They're actually sending some to our Engine and Truck Academy coming up in November. So our entire region has been very supportive of us.
That's good. So let's go to this. When we've talked about forcible entry, what are some of the other topics that you set out to cover when you laid out the plan for yourself? And this is really what I want to do. This is what I feel is important, and these are the goals I'm looking to achieve. So, other than forcible entry, what other plans what other programs do you run?
Our one of our biggest conferences that we do a couple times a year is Prioritize the Search. It is a completely search dedicated class. There are no hose lines. The only water that the students get is in a 2.5 gallon water can. And we do live fire, we do live smoke, and we take out all the visibility and have a great time with it. That class is sold out, and we've had students from as far as California attending twice. It sold out in less than 10 minutes the last time that we went live, and we're doing it again this April. We do a lot of vertical ventilation classes, a lot of saw classes, some through the lock forcible entry, and we're actually expanding into our engine side as well. We have snap tight hose that's on with us. We have Elkhart nozzles, and we're actually able to help assess attack packages with flow meters, pressure gauges, and all that, and work more into the engine side as well.
Okay, so when you let me ask you this. So when you set up a schedule, or I even shouldn't say, more of a curriculum, I should say, what do you think is the first thing to start with, other than a philosophy change that you have to give them and teach them and get them to swallow? But other than philosophy change, how do you plan out your curriculum usually?
It depends on the agency that we're going with. I don't like to have just a outline that will fit every department. We teach volunteer departments that have no mutual aid, that you may have 4 to 6 people on the entire call, to major city departments that are getting out on their first piece of apparatus. So we have to be quite fluent in being able to adjust the tactics that we're bringing and how we're delivering them to be able to make sure that we're meeting their needs to where they can actually use it to help.
It's interesting you mentioned that. When I was in school in Cincinnati that year, I lived outside the city in Hamilton County, and there was a small volunteer department in, I forget the name of the township. And so I happened to just drive by it one day, and I stopped in, and they said, "Oh yeah, we need volunteers." He says, "You have daytime availability?" I said, "No, I go to school, grad school, daytime, but nighttime." He goes, "No, we have enough nighttime people." But I talked with them for a little bit. One of the things I was kind of pleasantly surprised with then, and as I got into it finally a year later in North Carolina and started learning and reading the trades and stuff, was that the Midwest, a lot of parts of the Midwest have a very good auto mutual aid packs in effect, whereas in out here towards the east, there's a lot of pride in everybody's individual zone. So, okay, I guess we'll have to call them to come in and help with mutual aid. It's set up, but it's kind of like, well, don't call us, we'll call you.
Mm-hmm.
The Midwest has a lot of, the whole, I think what's called MAB, like in the greater Chicago area and other parts of, I think, part of Ohio, they have these mutual aid box alarms that are automatic. So soon as it's not just, if you're needed, but the type of call will automatically, dispatch 5 or 6 departments on that particular call. And we had something similar in my volunteer department in North Carolina, where most of the departments, but our chief had set up these mutual aid box alarms based on our station was 17 and 19. So it would be a 17 blank dash. So 1710 would be first engine in, drop the package at the hydrant, second engine, hook it up, and like that. To a 1712 was a flammable liquids fire, and that would activate 6 different departments to automatically dispatch at that point, as soon as that box alarm went out, box 1712. So I really was impressed by that as I learned more about that. And I think that must fit into what you're doing there with all these surrounding departments very, very well, that not only are you guys automatically on mutual aid, but now because of class like yours and maybe some of the others in the region, a lot of people know what's going on at the same time. So when they come to that scene, they know what they're supposed to do, and their IC confers with your IC, and everyone gets laid out and gets the job done.
So we found that to be very helpful. A lot of the rural departments that we'll go to and we teach, we actually encourage the open enrollment, so we can get people from the other departments that are around them in training with their guys, so everybody is on the same page. So it's a huge benefit.
Oh, it's got to be. I mean, especially when it's not just practice, but it's on the working fire ground or an emergency scene. Everybody's on the same page. It just must make it much easier for the IC and every firefighter doing their job.
Exactly. And the big thing is, when you train with people, you put your lives on the line and you start working with them. That's where a lot of the trust is built. So when you're able to trust them, you're able to go further.
Right. Very, very true. I've been a lifelong teacher since I was a young kid. I started teaching at 13. And I've always said that memorization is no way to teach. Learning is the way to teach. And you learn through repetition. And that's what it takes. Can you make a mistake? Yeah, you still might make a mistake. But if you've learned it, you know it pretty well. And that's the key. And then once you've learned it, you have to practice it. Because if you don't practice, that learning gently starts fading away. Memorization you don't learn anything with memorization. It's in there for the flash. It's like the flash memory in a computer. It's not a hard disk. You shut that computer off, what's alive is gone. Whereas you save it to the backup, to your hard drive or a zip drive, whatever, you're fine. Your data is safe. We have to do the same thing in the fire service. If we don't practice, if we don't continue to learn, and if we don't continue to teach and share, we're setting ourselves up for failure.
No, agreed. I make mistakes all the time. Things won't go as I want them to. Door won't force how I want it to do. Things will start to break apart. By the amount of reps that I do, the practice I get, it lets me be able to adapt things to be able to make it successful. If you don't have those reps, you don't have that experience to be able to adapt to the situation that's changing, you're going to be lost.
Right. I remember watching at one of the Great Florida Fire Schools. I think it was the first one I was at. They were doing a lock punch exercise with the guys. And it really was interesting to see the ones who had really learned it and felt it right, and how they were successful usually on their first punch with a Halligan. And then the others who were, okay. And the officer running the school would say, how much have you done that? A couple of times. If there's a family on the other side of that door, a couple of times ain't going to cut it.
No, absolutely not. Especially with the reinforcements that you're starting to see people put into their houses, between preppers, people living in drug-ridden neighborhoods and everything like that. You're having people secure their houses more. And you may not be able to see it. I mean, it's not uncommon for us to see window bars, burglar doors, and even drop bars put into residential houses.
Wow. That's amazing. We see some of it down here. Probably the biggest problem down here is actually people who don't take off their hurricane shutters
Mm-hmm.
After a possible warning or after a storm, and they leave them there for the season. And, it's all over public, public media. Remember to take off as soon as you were ready to put them up, you did a good job. Now it's time to take them down because there's no threat. And for your safety, you need to have those shutters off or opened again, whatever type you have shutters you have. One of the things that I don't know if you guys have up there that I think have been problematic, and I really should discuss this more with some of the local guys here, is very popular down here now are the reinforced hurricane storm windows. So you don't need gutters, you don't need shutters anymore of any kind. But that's got to tell me that if they can take a 70-mile-per-hour impact by a 2x4 shot from an air cannon, what's that going to do to us trying to get in through a window with the point of a pike pole, point of a pike pole or a point of a Halligan against that kind of manufacturing?
Yeah, you're starting to see it grow in the commercial aspect initially here, just for looting factors.
Right.
Everything that's gone on and people breaking in, they're going to more secured. I do think across the country, you're going to start seeing stuff like that in more residential houses for the same reason. They'll feel safer, they'll feel more secure with it. So when they upgrade their windows, they're going to end up going that route.
So how do if you have to make a forcible entry through a window, what do you use today? What can you use?
It all depends on the nature of the call. I mean, we can show you how to take the locks out of the windows. Sometimes you're going to have to use a saw. Sometimes you're going to have to pry against the mechanisms to be able to get it out there.
Right.
But we haven't had in this area a huge aspect to that. So for commercials, I'm going through the door. I'm going to pull the lock off. So that way I maintain my integrity, and we're going to go that route.
Okay.
But it is something that we're going to have to pay more attention to and train a lot more on.
Well, that's a good point. And I think that from the very fact that you're saying it now, that this is something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. And once we see more of it happening, then we are going to have to spend, that's going to have to be one of the focus that we're going to have to place to train ourselves so that we can do it. We know it, we recognize it, we get through it right away and do whatever we have to do once we're inside.
Yeah, I think it's a similar trend with automobiles that we've seen. The laminated glass go to the passenger side and your other glass around the vehicle. So it's just not the windshield anymore that we're having to deal with.
Yeah, and that's true. And that's probably coming to a surprise for some longer tenured firefighters who, and they don't really get to practice on it often. So all of a sudden they say, well, I'll just take this Halligan and take out this back window. And all of a sudden, all they get is a little spidering and a little teeny tiny hole in the piece of laminate on the inside, and say, "Uh-oh."
Oh yeah.
And then you got to get a hook and pull it out that way, whatever. But yeah, it's important that we stay abreast. We can't be satisfied where we are. We can never sit in our laurels, I don't think. We have to stay abreast, and our trades do a great job of trying to get the information out to us. They have some of the great leaders and teachers and mentors, instructors from the country writing in the trades. You and your team going around doing these, and lots of other teams are out there that are doing these kind of programs and teaching at other schools and trying to bring firefighters from the newest rookies to the longest tenured firefighters up to something new in technology that either we have to use in our job as firefighters or that we have to learn about so that we can use something to protect the citizens.
Agreed. And that's a big thing is when we have construction sites in our jurisdictions that we need to be stopping and talking to them. We need to meet with the foremen, the guys that are putting in all the products. And a lot of the times they'll have scraps that are left over with engineered beams, your I-beams, everything that are coming out. I've been able to get scraps of that to where we can use it to learn from. We can use it in our teachings and show people. But when the people are actually putting these buildings in, putting all these security features in, that's the time to get out and inspect them, to be able to go through, do a walkthrough with your crew and learn.
Right. And of course, one of the biggest problems we're having today is with, funding being difficult. Sometimes our fire prevention offices and fire inspection offices aren't as well funded as they should be. And it's tough for them to have that time to get out there and do that until all of a sudden they're in the midst of it. And, or sometimes, the companies themselves aren't that interested in having the fire department visit and learn. They have other priorities on their books. But I think that this commitment that you have and your team has to do this, and again, you guys, you've got 17 years in, and you were in the service before that. So you're not a youngster. But I think, well, to me, everybody's young, but I think that I'm really impressed that I'm very lucky also, I feel, that to meet some of the firefighters like you, young officers who are gung-ho minded to make the fire service better. I'm not just a lieutenant or a captain. Oh, okay, no, that's it. I got these guys to do the work for me. I don't have to worry about anything. No, you guys are out there. You want to be in the lead. You want to be working with your firefighters. You want to be teaching them. You want to be practicing with them. You're not looking to beat the crap out of them. You're just looking for them to learn to be the best that they can be. Listen, how many years did we hear the armed forces commercials on TV? Be the best that you can be. Be all you can be.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we have to be in the fire service. We are, whether we want to admit it or not, we are a paramilitary organization. We have regular enlisted people. We have first level officers. Some departments even start with sergeants, and then they go to lieutenants and captains, and then different types of chiefs. But the fact is, it doesn't change the fact that every one of us is still a firefighter.
Oh, absolutely. Your bugles, title, none of that means anything on the fire scene. You still have to be able to perform to the expectations the citizens have for you. It's not what you have for yourself, it's what they expect of you. They don't care if you're volunteer, combination, part-time, you've been on for 2 months, you've been on for 20 years. You're expected to perform the same.
Exactly. That's really the bottom line. It's what the citizens expect. One thing we know, for the most part, they see a red or a white or yellow vehicle. Yes, there's some blue, but they see it and they go, ooh, ah. If we're just driving down the street regular. If we're running with lights and siren, especially if it's a queue, like my dog loves, and she sings to, because I got a station just a half mile down the street from me. And when that engine 64 comes by and she's winding that queue, my dog is singing up a storm, and they know it. They love it. And but then the citizens get excited. They say they're going on a call. They're going to help somebody, especially kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it can be the opposite when we're on a roadway or a highway and they're slowing down and rubbernecking. That can be a pain in the butt. There's no doubt about that. But a lot of people, we used to think, especially in my day in the 70s days, that they were all slowing down just to see the blood and guts. But I learned after that, when I wasn't active anymore, that a lot of them slowed down to see the firefighters, the rescue people, just to watch them do what they were doing. And we know today, and for the last maybe 25 to 30 years on TV, when there's a major call, the TV news breaks away from the regular programming to show that call. Mm-hmm. And then it makes national news that these 4 firefighters went up to a crane and rescued the crane operator who had to escape from his cab because of a fire. And these guys got out there and saved him. And then people say, oh my God, firefighters do that too? And they have no idea until they see that. Yet, meanwhile, those crews, in that case, those tactical crews, have been practicing that day after day, time after time after time. So just in case it happened once in their district, they could answer the call.
Agreed. And I think that's an area that as a fire service, we need to do better. We need to educate the citizens on what all we do. So they need to know what all we're investing in them to be ready. That way, when we need funding or we need equipment, that they are educated, not just be caught blind in it.
Yeah, that's, you really said it perfectly. We need to show them and educate them, not just teach ourselves. We have to educate the public what we do for them. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, where and it's not because we don't want, for most part, it's not because we don't want it. We just don't have time sometimes to do that. But we have to try to make it some sort of a priority, because the more they appreciate who we are and what we do, not just the when we do it, but who we are and what we do, the more backing and support we're going to get from the public, whether it's a fire fee that has to be instituted, whether it's a small millage increase in the tax base. They're going to say, well, I mean, did you see how they stopped that apartment fire, that complex there? These guys need that money to be able to do that kind of stuff. That's what we need to do. A good PR program.
No, every day that we're on duty, we need to be doing that for the citizens.
Right.
The citizens already invested in us before we even cross the threshold. Before we even respond on that call, they've already invested in us. We have to return that investment every day we show up for duty.
That's a great way. That's a great way of looking at it. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a break here, quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more with Chris about what if you're interested in not just taking his school, but what if you want to do the same? What if you have the same philosophy as Chris has and his team? How do you say, I want to put some of what these ideas were on this podcast, I want to put them into action in our department. How do we go about doing that? So we'll talk about that when we come back. If you're watching the video, you won't see anything different during this break. If you're listening to the audio, we'll have a few public service announcements. As always, please stay tuned. We'll be right back. And welcome back to this episode of 5 Alarm Task Force. I'm your host, Steve Green. And with me is my guest today, Lieutenant Chris Kessinger from Ohio. And Chris has formed this company. It's about 2 years old now. And it's Citizens First. Hold on, I got to make sure I get it right. Oh, I don't want to ruin it. Citizens First Fire Training. And when we started, I wasn't sure if he was talking about, it's a great new training aid for citizens, or was it a fire department's fire service training? And that's what it is. Actually, to tell you the truth, and talking with Chris, both on the show and a little bit offline before we started during this break, I think he's actually accomplishing both without even realizing it, because he is so dedicated to not only educating firefighters, helping them to learn something new every day, share something new every day with somebody else that they've learned, but it's also going to benefit the public. So no, he's not teaching the public how to fight fires with an extinguisher and like that, but he's putting them first over and above everything else. That it's the first objective of every firefighter is to protect the public first. And we've had a great first segment of the show, and now we're going to talk a little bit more about his passion for it and what specifically brought him to it and the reactions that he's had. They've done multiple classes. He even said in the first segment, they were able to do live classes during the pandemic without a single transmission. Now, I don't know how many of you can count those on your fingers, but I can't that's happened. It's way more than that those things have occurred, or we had to cut out live classes altogether. So Chris, what was the real turning point for you? You had been a volunteer, went into the military, came back, you had your civil service points and got the job. You were on the truck company, I guess, originally. Is that where you were first assigned?
Engine and truck company was first.
All right. So what was that turning point that said, this isn't enough. We got to do more.
A lot of it's just seeing how things have been getting watered down in training academies because they're held to such tight time restraints. You're not able to truly teach as much as it there, and we have a huge learning curve. So there's a disassociation between book knowledge for your test to get certified and what actually is going to make a difference on the street.
Practical knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's really true in everything in life. You can study. I could read medical books up the wazoo, and I've got 20 years of paramedicine behind me, but that doesn't mean I'm a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a big difference in practical knowledge. And I think sometimes some of us get kind of big heads from book reading and think we know more than we do. And hopefully we learn that lesson safely without impinging on anybody else. And sometimes we don't.
Absolutely. It's a big thing that we're learning is with fires going down in the US and fatalities going up. Right now, today, we're averaging 6.5 civilian fatalities a day in residential fires in the United States. So fires are down across the country, but civilian fire fatalities are up about 24%. We're having to do something different. I know when I came in, I was taught how to hold the heel of the person in front of me, and we went around the room in a square. We didn't search the room. We followed a train the entire way around, and we were more focused on holding onto that heel so we didn't die or something bad didn't happen, and then we were to sweep out and be able to actually truly search.
Wow, what a difference. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to flip it around. When I was in, our measure of heat was our bare ears, even if you had the ear flaps down on the helmet, because we had no Nomex hoods. But when I was trained to search, we would train to walk the hallways. We had to learn the floor and find the walls. We had to do that and then go make the room, do the sweep under the bed, sweep whatever, and then find our way out, mark the door, chalk it or mark it, and move on to the next one. Why would that have ever disappeared? That I mean, so I'm out in 85, and here we are now, 40 years later nearly. And for the first time, I'm hearing that some departments stopped training searches that way and just told them to go heel and toe.
Yeah, a lot of academies, even books, are teaching them stay on the wall so you're oriented. You don't need to be orientated to a wall when you're in a 10 by 10, 15 by 15 bedroom. You know where the walls are. You know it's going to be exterior wall. There's going to be a window there. People aren't on the walls when you're finding your victims. They're on beds. They're in the middle of the floor. They're in your means of egress. We have 14% of victims which are in 6 feet of a doorway. We have to be hitting our means of egress. We have to be actually sprawling out, not searching with the tool, because you can't tell the difference between a pile of clothes and a body when you're swinging your tool. You have to get hands-on with it. You have to get off the walls, and that's where you'll find your victims.
Yeah, we were always told we got to pull the tool. If you feel anything, you pull it out and see what it is. Wow, that's. I never thought I'd see stuff go backwards, but now you made the point. But it's sad to hear that some things work well from the get-go and should stay that way. So this fact of the fire deaths going up is something new to me. I have not heard that. I know a number of fires are down. The number of large fires, though, have gone up, unfortunately. Probably over the last 5 years, we've probably seen a dozen or more huge fires at under construction sites, especially big apartment sprawls. And as you've mentioned in the first segment, that that can be, if we're not up to date on what's happening during those construction phases, then we're going to be behind the 8 ball from the very get-go. Mm-hmm. No matter what time the alarm comes in, if it's 10 o'clock in the morning or 10 p.m. at night or 3 a.m., we're not going to know what to expect because we don't know what the construction was. And
Agreed.
we don't always get the plans back from the city. Sometimes we don't have a fire marshal who can make, full inspections. They do the basic, sprinkler inspection and hydrostatic inspection and stuff like that, but they don't have the full electrical. That's left to the electrical people. But all those other inspections fall on our responsibility when there's an emergency.
Agreed. As a company, when you're going out and looking at the buildings, you're not looking at plans. You're looking at voids. Whenever you're doing a remodel, new construction, you're adding onto a building, you're creating voids. That's where your fire is going to be traveling. That's where it's going to be hiding. So if I can get out just as a company and I can see where these voids are being created, I know the path that fire is going to be hiding from me and I can get ahead of it.
Right. And even better is today with computers and tablets and everything like that, you can mark that down on the scene and it becomes a permanent part of the record. Mm-hmm. Whereas my day, we couldn't do that. You'd have to take notes, bring it back, and then you'd have to make copies of it for handout or whatever, or give it to the chief, whatever the case is. But today, the entire company and the entire department can know that all the details of a new complex, apartment complex or new office building in their district, because the team went out there, they looked at it, they have an idea, and these are the warning signs for this place for us. This is what we have to be aware of. And that, I think, can go across the country. Go across a better part of the world as well, that every fire department starts thinking along those lines. And there are some departments, listen, we have some of the best firefighters in the world in this country. There's no doubt about it. And definitely some of the damn bravest firefighters in the world in this country. But that doesn't mean we're perfect. It doesn't mean we can't improve and get better. And again, it boils down to what you're doing. Somebody has to teach, and we have to be willing to learn. Mm-hmm. So from going from a small to medium city community where you are and yet you've had students from volunteer departments, you have volunteer departments coming from Ohio, coming to your classes as well, which I think is phenomenal and speaks well for the classes that you're running. Because to get a volunteer, sometimes for volunteers to get them to go to extra classes is difficult. But if you're getting that kind of response, I think it's the product that you're delivering. And that's what makes the difference. And it doesn't mean everybody has to teach what you're teaching. What I'm saying is that if you are a teacher, an instructor in the community, not just in your department, you have to think, what can I offer to the students, the attendees, that will best benefit them over the course of our 2 days together? That they'll learn. It's not going to just be book stuff. Yeah, well, the first couple, first 20 minutes we're in the classroom getting to know each other and hi, where you from, what are you doing? But after that, we're hands-on learning that we can take home and share with our departments and our members and our colleagues. And then they can start feeling empowered that they've learned how to do something new or do something in a better way. May not be new, but it might be, oh, I never thought of doing it that way. Well, just like we talked about the sash, the window sash, or something like that. So how do we take this message of yours and magnify it? How do we get this out to, besides this podcast, how do we get this out to more and more of our leaders, our mentors, our people like you, lieutenants and captains, and some of them aren't even officers, but they go to every conference they can go to and learn as much as they can. And then they start learning, okay, now I've been 3 years at conferences, I want to start teaching something as well. How do you encourage them and how do you convince them, go ahead, do it, it's worth it?
Well, people need to realize that this career, they need to invest in themselves. They need to invest in their learning. With the pandemic and everything else, the first budget line that gets cut from every department is your training budget. Doesn't matter where you are, any financial trouble or another department needs money, training budget, the first thing to be cut. The thing that I learned early in my career from great instructors who are out there, I have to be the one responsible to invest in my knowledge. So I used my vacation time, I used my extra money, and I put it aside. And at least once a quarter, I would go to an outside conference. I would go to an outside class, whether it be across the country or just another state somewhere else, to learn something and to bring that back to my crew. And I think if department leaders start seeing that as an investment in retention of keeping your guys, bringing that knowledge in, it'd be a huge change. That training can't be something that's cut. It can't be something that we sacrifice at the first sign of any type of financial issues. That when we invest in our people, they invest in our department. And when they invest in our department, they invest back in the citizens. And that's what we have to be doing.
Right. We have to invest in citizens. If you don't invest in the training, then it's like pulling up to a dry hydrant at a working fire, and you're the only engine company or a two-man engine company on that first response, and you come up sucking wind. And then you worry, what's next? Well, that's it. You just answered the question. You just said we invest in this chain. There's a trickle down effect, and it comes back to our citizens, who will then, as we talked about in the first segment, if they know we're invested in them, they will invest in us. So if we need money for the training budget, we put the word out there to public. And I'll give you an example with, I know this works. It has worked. There was a fire department up in Massachusetts. They only had one aerial. It was an old aerial, and it had been down for 6 weeks already. And it was in for repairs, but the acting city manager wouldn't pay for the repairs. Meanwhile, they had 4 12-story upper age buildings for seniors in their community. 12 stories, no aerial. Okay. Nearest aerial will have to come from another city. That's the only one they had. So I found them on Twitter, or they found me. I don't know how. We started talking, and I said, we don't know what to do, because we keep pressuring City Hall. I said, no, stop pressuring City Hall. What do you mean? If we don't pressure them, they're not going to. I said, no. I'm not saying stop pressuring. I'm saying you stop pressuring City Hall. Take the message to the people. Go take an engine company to each of those buildings on 4 different days, have a little coffee and donuts, because that's what will bring them downstairs, and tell them that, we have a special truck that could reach the top of this building if there was an emergency, but it's been in for repairs for almost 2 months, and the city won't pay for it to be repaired. What do you mean they won't pay for it? Well, 3.5 weeks later, suddenly the city found money and the area was repaired. Take it to the people.
Absolutely. If the citizens don't know, you're not going to have the support of them.
Exactly. Don't fight City Hall itself. Negotiate with City Hall, but use the citizens to be your army, to back you up. And they will. If you invest in them, they will back you up. And we've all seen it. Every firefighter, if you're an active firefighter, no matter how long you've been in, whether you're a new probie or you've got 30 years, somebody has come up to you already and said, thank you.
Absolutely.
And you have to say, you're welcome. No problem. This is what we do. We're here to help you. Let them know that you care about them. Don't just show up in a call. Every time you have an opportunity, let them know you care about them, and they will care about you.
Absolutely. There's no other profession in the world that somebody will hand you their lifeless 2-week-old kid, give you the keys to their house, the keys to the business, with never even meeting you. They trust it to you just on the title that's showing up on your paycheck.
I just saw recently that firefighters in general receive an 85% auto trust level from the public. I bet you there are a lot of other professions that get worse they had half of that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
We do. But we do. Matter of fact, we even have more, and this I think is sad, but we have more trust than our paramedics and EMTs. And I think that's sad because they are, especially if they're not connected to the fire department, if they're an independent organization, because it's not fair to them, because they do invest in the public. Every single call, they're investing in the public. And sometimes the public just doesn't know about them well enough, or they know there's a rescue squad or something like that, but they've never had a contact. It's when that contact occurs that you prove your investment in the citizens and take care of them, and they will then invest in you. And I think that's so important, that concept of investment. And I don't think it's discussed enough in the fire service. And I think we do have to do that. And I think we have to change our purview. Look, we have a lot of boats in the pond as firefighters. All the training that we have to, and it's changing every day. We know that. There's something new out. We got to learn about it, something new, and we don't have the time. As you said, first budget thing that gets cut is training. So how do we keep learning? How do we keep learning? But we have to, measure, take a measure. Hopefully our leaders help us find that measure of will work for us and what's going to be. But we have to continue to find our way in the changing atmosphere of firefighting in the world today. And
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about. We don't have a choice, because we've seen where, Chief Billy Goldfeder just published this in either Sunday's or yesterday's Close Calls about the fire department that went to the house. People called 911. Nobody answered the door. They left, and the family died of carbon monoxide poisoning. That should never have happened. That company was not invested in. It wasn't just the fire company. It was the dispatchers didn't call back. Nobody called back. It just was wrong. It was wrong. And that, even though we do good 98% of the time, that 2% can paint huge black marks on our reputation because of that.
Absolutely. You have people that are listening to the scanners to everything you do, but every call that you show up on, they're holding their phones up recording. You will go viral in an instant.
Oh, yes. And cameras. Everybody's a reporter now with a camera.
You have less people wanting to help on a call and more people recording so they can share on their social media accounts and everything else there. So if you're not invested, you're not trained, you're not showing up to perform as professionals, everybody in the world will see it.
Yep. Yeah, that's the truth. And that's the last thing we want to happen. And look, 99.9% of us are dedicated to the task.
Mm-hmm.
We are, or else we wouldn't be in the job. And that's how we open the show, is that we know there are risks, but we're saying we'll accept them. We'll do it the best we possibly can to help our communities. And sometimes there are things that get beyond us, and that is life. And we can't change that. We can't take it back. There aren't any redos, but we forge ahead because that's who we are as firefighters. There's probably, other than certain physicians, especially these physicians and nurses and healthcare workers who've been on the front line in this pandemic, who are working 18, 19, 20-hour shifts, getting 2 hours of rest in a snack room, and then they're back out again. Those are the people like us. And we even have our medics who, when they are off from their shift, are helping at hospitals anyway in the pandemic. That's the dedication. And, it's important for any of you who are watching this or listening to this, realize that, 99%, 98, 99% of the people who are here to serve you are dedicated to doing so. It's the firefighters, it's our brothers and sisters in law enforcement and EMS, and your road rangers who are out there no matter the weather to help you and protect you. Recovery operators. Everybody thinks, well, it's just a tow truck operator. No, it's not. Do you know how many tow truck operators are killed on scenes that occur on active roadways by distracted drivers? They lose their life. Their families lose them. No different than losing a firefighter or a police officer or a paramedic or an EMT. They're out there doing their job because they care about people. And that's what's important. And so that's the way you have to look at these kind of people, that they're here to help us, to help the people in their communities, whether they know you or they don't know you, they don't care. They just want to be there to help. And that's the most important thing. And so many of the firefighters of this country do invest themselves in their communities, and they take time off from their vacations to help do something in their community, to man a rescue at a sports game, at a weekly football game or something like that. They'll take their extra time to do that. And maybe they have a kid in football, maybe they don't. They just want to help the community. And if you go around America, hopefully when this pandemic is all done and over with and we can travel around and see this great country of ours again, you'll see that those are the people you'll see most of the time. We can't let the few that cause the problems and stuff like that change the color of how we look at our country. This is a great country, and we have wonderful people here who want to take care of us, and we have to know that they're dedicated and devoted to doing that. So we've talked about investing and what it means both for the firefighter to invest in the community and the community to invest in their firefighters. So how do we, trying to think how to phrase this question, I'm not usually one who has to pause for thought, but how do we grow this vegetable? How do we plant this seed? And I've talked about leadership and I've written about leadership, that leadership, nobody is born a leader. We're all born babies and we don't know jack. But leadership is something that we can tend like a garden. You plant a seed in somebody, you see somebody coming up, and you say, you know what? That kid's really with it. She's doing extra work, extra classes all the time. She's always with it. She might be one that could move up. And so you plant that seed, and like you would in your garden, you put good soil on there, keep it moist, watch for that first bloom to come up, that first stem. And then you start getting excited, start working. We can do the same thing with leadership in our departments. We can help them grow by seeking us as leaders, those who are already leaders, look for the new ones coming up and kind of like, not push them at it, but just kind of nudge them, a little gentle nudge. You might be doing this. I learned that lesson when I was sent to those 3 state fire schools in that first department, and I never knew why. There were people who had 10 years in that department before I ever joined in that volunteer department. But it wasn't until 2017 when I got to see my chief again for the first time since 1981 that he said, I bet you and Richard always want to know why you went to those. I sent you the guys to those state fire conferences. And he said, yeah, we talk about that all the time. Because you don't know why? I said, nope. And he said, because I saw you boys going to be leaders in this fire department. And I wanted you to get the fast track by going to the state fire school because they could get you faster than what we could do here in the department. And because I know it didn't turn out that way, and I was sorry to see you boys leave, but you would have been captains in this department as volunteers. And I said, we had no idea, Chief. We didn't know anything about it. And he goes, well, I should have maybe told you that sooner, but he goes, I just wanted to get you guys trained, and I knew I could count on you boys because of how much time you spent at the station on your free time just to come in here to learn. And if we can get others to see that same point of view, to see leaders, we can have a lot more people like you teaching out there, teaching classes in their communities, helping their department invest in their public and have the public invest back in them, because they will help you. If you ask them and they know you're invested, they will help you when they know that you've got their backs. And no, they're not going to want to, like $1 billion tax levy, but they'll fight for what will help you at least to some level, because they'll believe in you and your job.
And that's I mean, everything that you just described there is investment. You're investing in the people that are coming into your organization. Your organization's investing in you. Civilians are investing there. And you need that, just like you were talking about with the garden. To get a culture of excellence in an agency, you have to treat it like a garden. It needs nurturing, it needs attention, and you need to be adjusting stuff for that to allow stuff to be able to grow. And when you get that culture, you get the retention, you're holding on to your people, those invested people. We don't care if the people that aren't invested, that are there just for a t-shirt, a sticker on their car, or something like that, leave. They're not doing anything for the citizens. They're not doing anything positive for the organization. We truly have to focus on the people that are invested in the citizens, invested in our organization, and develop them into not only leaders, but to develop the culture of our organization to reflect that. Where we hold everybody to the same minimum standards for the person that doesn't want to do anything, that is the standards of your organization. We have to raise those standards to the expectations of the citizens and demand that all of our people are performing to that level.
Very true. Very true. Well, Chris, I got to tell you something. You have really hit me between the eyes with this. I'm really glad. I have a number of friends that I've met over the last few years who are teachers. One friend, a good friend, is Sean Duffy. He has his company's called Build Your Culture, which I love. And he and another good friend, Captain Nick Peppard, created a podcast called Make Do, and that's D-O, because it's geared for suburban firefighters, because that's what suburban firefighters, because that's what I was both times, have to do. Sometimes you have to make do, and they're both really dedicated to the same, what we've just talked about in this summary. Investing in not only your department, but invest in your culture. You know, you can be lots of things to a lot of people, but you're not always going to be great at all of them. You can be wonderful at a couple, you can be good at a couple of others, fair, and then not so good at something else. But if you can share what you're great at, share it with others, to help them feel great as well and invested, then that's success. That's success. Those are the people you want to go into that building with. You know, they got your backs and they know that you have theirs. And there is nothing more important to firefighters than knowing our colleagues have our backs.
Absolutely.
No matter the call. So this has been a great eye-opening. It's really, I don't know, it's just a little bit different than the other instructors and stuff that I've interviewed over the years. Everyone, I mean, the instructors that I have interviewed, I have to say, are really have been terrific people, really dedicated to the task as well. But a lot of them aim outside to train other firefighters outside. You started by investing in your own people first before you took it to other firefighters. And that's, I think, the key difference is if you have that idea, you have that desire in yourself to make the fire service better, you have to start with your crew. Mm-hmm. Even if you're not the officer, bring it up to the officer. You have an idea, don't be afraid to go to the officer and say, hey, Cap, what do you think about this? Or Lou, you know, we're scheduled for Sunday, which is normally a quiet day, but could we maybe make something out of Sunday and try this idea? It's only a start. The worst thing that happens is the officer says, I don't think so. Okay. You just try again later with somebody else. Don't give up on yourself.
Absolutely not. And a lot of the lower level or newer guys that are in that position, if you start going out and doing stuff on your own, opening the doors, getting into the tools, throwing a ladder by yourself on the outside of the station, that stuff is contagious. Other people with their crew will come out and start seeing what you're doing. Yep. Then they'll start joining you. Then your entire crew will be there. Then you're going to start spreading that as it goes to the other crews, the other shifts, other stations. That is very, very contagious.
You know, many of the folks my age, had the idea of getting involved in the fire service from the old show Emergency. And it's still on repeats, and I still watch it once in a while, although I've seen probably every episode 20 times. And I was in college when it came on. And one of the things I noticed as I watched them again, especially after I started this podcast, was that since it was based on LA County fire and they were using real stories, that was one of the great things that Jack Webb and R.A. Senator were able to negotiate with LA County Fire, was that they were going to use real scenarios, real rescues that had occurred in the county. And they oftentimes had some of the guys in the bay or outside in the back of the station doing something. Just the two guys like Roy and what's his name? And then all of a sudden the other guys came out to see what they were doing and why they were doing it. And then the next scene, all of them were involved in doing it. And that's exactly what you just said. If you have the cojones to get out there and say, I'm going to try this. I'm going to practice this on my own. I don't care if nobody else comes to me. We have some free time. I'm going to practice this. And you're out there for a half hour. Someone's going to come out and check on you and say, what the hell are you doing? Mm-hmm. I wanted to get this better. I wasn't doing well. I'm not good at knots. And I decided I'm going to work knots and I'm going to be able to hoist an axe. I'm going to hoist a can up there. I'm going to hoist a saw up there. I'm going to feel better about doing it. Okay. Well, come on, let me help you. It's hard to do it by one. And you got two. And then the fourth one comes out. They've invested in you because you've invested in your department. Mm-hmm. And then the dominoes fall from there. And that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Everybody, the career is your own and it's what you make of it. You get a return on the investment that you put in. You can either be mediocre for 25 years or you can make a difference in that 25 years. That is up to each individual to make that decision for them.
Very true. Great way to put it. Great way to put it. Make a return, get a return on your investment. We're all ready to do it when it deals with money, and we don't even know how safe the venture is, but we invest in it. And then we lose our shirts. Well, here's something that if you invest in, the payback is an exorbitant amount that you can't even measure. Right?
Absolutely.
Chris, thank you so much for spending time with us today. This was a great podcast, great information, a different swing on it than we've had before. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to meet you via Zoom. We've talked about a little something off the air that we're going to hopefully get into later on in the early autumn, work on together as to help each other out. And but I can tell you that if you want to be in touch with and follow Chris, you can find him on both Instagram and Facebook, and just look for Citizens First Fire Training. Now on Instagram, it's probably there's an underscore between the words, so it's Citizens _First _Fire _Training, and Facebook, look for Citizens First Fire Training, and he's there. Be in touch with him. You want to learn how to start this kind of a project at your department? He'll be happy to help you out, help give you guidance. You want to find out what kind of programs he has coming up in the future? Reach him on Instagram or Facebook. He'll tell you what's coming up, when they're going to be, what the topic's going to be, what the costs are, etc. This is the guy. If you want to learn about investment in yourself and in your department, this is one of the best people I've interviewed in 5 years that can give you that direction. And I really like to see you turn to Chris and give him your support and reach out for, and if you do, he will give you that support in return. There's no doubt about it. So again, Chris, thanks very much. Folks, if you're watching the video, this will be the end of the video portion of the show. Those of you listening to the audio podcast, we're going to be right back after these words. But to my video viewers, thank you for tuning in on YouTube. We really do appreciate it every episode that you join us. And we hope to see you again next week. Until then, stay safe and stay well. So long.